Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do with this image, once I've got my panel looking like this, I'm going to drag this backdrop layer to the plus button that's just at the bottom here, and it's going to make a new background. And what I want to do first is get rid of my dog's ears and clean up this backdrop here. So the first thing I'm going to do with that is I'm going to take my square marquee tool here, and I'm going to select the backdrop that I want adjusted. So I'm not going to go all the way to her dress, because if I bring this down all the way here, it's going to be too close to her dress, and it's going to start trying to select her dress when we do the fill. So how you want to do the fill for this is you hit Shift F5, and it's going to bring up your content aware fill. So you want to make sure that you have content aware selected, normal, and at 100% opacity, and you'll just hit OK. And as you can see, it's filled in quite a bit here, which is really nice. And we'll just bring this down a little bit more and do that again. So we're going to hit Shift F5, content aware, and hit OK. Shift F5 and enter. Okay, and you can hit Control D to deselect, and it's done a really nice job of cleaning up that backdrop for us. Alright, so we'll do the same thing with my dog down here at the bottom. That might be a little close to her dress, but let's see what it looks like. Shift F5 and enter. Oh, actually it did a really good job. Control D to deselect. Yeah, it did a good job there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this tool here. It is the patch tool, and clean up some of these little marks that we got here. So it did a good job down here, but it's selected something that I don't really want. So I'm just going to drag that and clean it up a little bit. And I'm just going to circle another bit of the backdrop and bring it up to kind of a cleaner spot. All right. I'm just going to zoom in and see if there's anything on the bottom here that needs cleaning up. Smooth that out a little bit. There's some hairs. Alright, so that's looking beautiful. We'll just do a before and after on that. Love it. Alright, so now that I've got that done, I'm just going to do my frequency separation. So I have to flatten this, and I'm just going to go into my actions here. And I have my basic frequency separation action, and I'm just going to hit OK. Now, if you haven't downloaded this yet, you do have it in the downloads in the membership panel. All right. So in this action, you've got your blur, and you have your gray action, or sorry, your gray layer. Alright, so on the blur layer is where we're going to do all of the softening of the skin. So I'm just going to get my little lasso tool here, and I want my feather to be around 10%. I'm just going to zoom in on her. And I'm going to select parts of her skin here. I'm just going to go filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. And I usually do it around 7%. Now, she has got gorgeous skin. She doesn't really need this, but for these really fancy kind of princess edits, I always do like a kind of a painterly look, and this is going to enhance that painterly look and really soften up the skin and create that effect on there. What I'm doing now is I'm just selecting and hitting Control Shift F, I believe. Or is it just Control F? Nope. Control Shift. All right. You can also go up to filter, and it's going to have your oh, it's Alt Control F. Yeah, sorry. Alt Control F. It's going to have the last filter that you put on your image just at the top here, so you can also select it that way. All right, Control D to deselect that. And on the gray layer, that's where, you know, if she's got any blemishes or anything like that, which she does not, but if she did, you would just go in with your healing tool, or your patch tool, or you could even use the gradient tool to kind of paint her skin. Is you could actually make a brand new layer. So I'm just going to click on my blur. I'm going to hit the plus sign, and it's going to bring up a new layer, and I'm just going to rename this layer Paint. And I could do that exact thing again. So I've got my paintbrush. I'm going to hit Alt to bring up the dopper tool, and then you can, you know, paint it on that way as well. Again, you want to keep selecting the areas you're going to be painting. So if you're, you know, kind of working, I usually work within that T-zone to brighten that up. You can do under the eye, which is always a good place to go as well. Get rid of that darkness under the eye. Bring out some of the highlights on her skin here. And this painting that I'm doing right now, again, is going to really bring out that painterly effect as well, if that's the effect you're kind of looking to get. Alright, so I'm just going to do like a little before and after on everything I did there, and as you can see, it's just, you know, brightening up a little bit. I'll zoom in so you can see the effect a bit better on her face. Alright, now I normally don't take out this bit here because it is a scar of hers. It's a trait that she has. And that's kind of my rule of thumb when I'm touching up skin. If it's a red mark, I will take it out. If it is a brown mark or a birthmark, I usually will leave that in. Obviously, I don't take people's freckles out. I usually will keep in scars unless my client asks me to take out the scar. So that's why I didn't take that bit out at all. All right, so the other thing you could do here is you can actually sharpen within your frequency separation. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to select this gray layer and I'm going to drag it down and copy it to the plus sign. And I'm going to actually put a layer mask on there. So I just clicked this button to put a layer mask on it. And I'm going to invert it. So I'm going to hit Control I to invert that. I'm also going to bring the opacity down, and anywhere between 20 to 40% is a good starting point. So I'm going to actually just start at 30 right in the middle there. And I'm going to get my paintbrush up, just a regular white paintbrush, and I'm going to paint it on those details. So her eyes. Do I have, oh, I don't have it all the way up to 100% here. So the opacity on your brush is just right here. And I'm going to paint those details in. Maybe on her ear as well. And we'll hit a before and after on that one. All right, so before and after completely on that frequency separation. It's just softening up the skin and brightening up her eyes. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is liquefy. So I'm going to make a brand new layer. You can either flatten it or you can make a new layer on top of this by hitting Shift, Control, Alt, E as in Edward. And it'll bring a whole new layer above this one. So if you make a mistake on this layer, you can just delete it and you haven't like messed up anything previous that you've done. So I like to use that a lot. So I'm going to name this one Liquify. And I'm going to go up to Filter and Liquify. And I'm just going to zoom in on her. And we will bring out those curls in her hair a little bit more. This is the first time my daughter had her hair curled, and man was she excited, because she's got fairly straight hair and the rest of us in our family all have curly hair. So she kind of felt left out, and she's like, oh my god, it's the first time I've ever had curly hair. She was jumping up and down. She was so excited. It was just so cute. And I'm gonna enhance those curls even more and kind of bring out some of those waves a little bit. And I'm just doing a little bit at a time here. And when you first open your Liquify, I will mention this, that they have the pressure on your pen like so high. And what happens with that, I'll just show you quickly. So I think they have it at like 50% or something crazy. So the pressure, if it's high, it's just like super easy for you to move this, right? And it makes it really easy for you to like make a mistake or do too much. So the first thing I did when I downloaded my Photoshop was I brought this down to 20. And I will leave it there. I don't ever change it. And what happens is it just makes it way more slighter, like smaller motions. So it allows you to like just do little bits at a time, and you're not doing like a huge movement at one point. So like if you do too much, it's just gonna look, people are gonna know. They're gonna be like, oh, well, she just used they just used the Liquify tool. So I like to just do a little bit at a time, and it looks way more natural that way. So as you can see, all those things that I did there looks way more natural. So if I was to do it at 50%, and as you can see, like, I'm just making teeny motions here, but it is making her hair move so much, and I'm not moving my pen very much. You'd have to just be way more careful. So I like to bring the pressure down. So I'm just going to actually go back because, like I said, I think that's just a little too much. There we go. So 20%. All right. So I'm liking how that's looking there. And I'm just going to look at her dress and see if there's anything I want to adjust there. I might bring this point down just a little bit and puff out this sleeve a little bit, because this one is really, really quite puffy. Maybe even bring it out a little bit more here. And in a little bit right here. I also might add some like fun kind of waves and stuff in the skirt, and kind of just enhance the kind of painterly look a little bit more here. It's already got some waves going on. I'm just kind of enhancing what's already happening in the dress. Beautiful. All right, I'm going to hit OK on that one. And the before and after on there. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is really enhance the contrast in her skin here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a curves layer, and I'm going to bring down the shadows and bring up the highlights, and that's going to make a contrast curves. But as you can see, the effect it's making on her skin, it's kind of turning her skin orange, and I don't want that to affect the colors, so I'm going to turn this from normal to luminosity. And as you can see, it's not really affecting the color anymore. It's only affecting the shadows and highlights in her skin. It's not turning her skin orange. So I'm going to invert this. I'm going to go Control I. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint it on her skin with my brush at 100% opacity. And it's a white brush on the black layer that I inverted there. If you want to look at your mask and see where you're painting, you hit your little backslash key and it'll show you your mask. So everything that is red is masked off. So it's not being affected at all. And to get rid of that, you just hit backslash again. Alright, so the before and after on that's before and that's after. And that's just, you know, I just wanted to enhance the contrast in her skin. And I didn't paint it on her eyes or the dress or hair or anything like that, just her skin. And I really do like the effect that it's giving me. So I will leave that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint her skin some more. So I'm just going to bring up a plain layer, and I'm going to again be selecting her skin tone, like some of her highlights, and just painting those on. Oh, except I need a low opacity, so we're going to just put it at 10 again, 10%. And I'm just going to enhance those highlights on her skin with my paintbrush here. I'm just hitting the Alt key to bring up the little dopper. Now with the one on her nose, I'm going to get in nice and close. Make my brush quite small. I'm going to use that same tone and make some highlights around her lips here. And what I'm doing is I have it at a low opacity, so I'm just running it over and over again until it's built up to the point where I think that it's good and I want to leave it like that. Alright, so that's the before and after that I've done on her skin there. And now I'll show you, I'll just group these two. I'll name it skin and before and after. So I am just noticing one thing I don't love on her cheek. It's almost looking like a bruise. So I'm going to just take this tool here and maybe on the Liquify layer, I'll just kind of blend it out a bit with the heal tool. See, that looks a little bit better. All right. There. Awesome. All right, so now I'm going to do a dodge and burn layer. So we're going to make a curves layer. We're going to bring down the midtones in one of the layers here. Invert the layer mask, so Control I, and we'll call this one Burn. And another curves, we'll bring the midtones up. And invert that, Control I, and we'll name this one Dodge. Alright, so with my brush at 100%, on the burn layer, I'm going to paint over all of the kind of shadow parts of her dress. Alright, now with the dodge, we want to do that same thing but with all the highlights. Alright, I'm just going to group these, so I select them both and hit Control G to group them. And I'm going to call this Dodge and Burn. And we'll just see the before and after on that. Awesome. I love that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make another Dodge and Burn layer, but I'm going to go over just those teeny little highlights that and shadows that I want to burn and dodge just a little bit more. So we'll go up to layer and then a new layer, and we're going to hit that to turn the mode to an overlay and fill it with 50% gray. I'm going to name it again Dodge and Burn. And I'm going to hit OK. So to bring up a gray layer here, and I'm going to actually use the highlight, the Dodge and Burn tool, which is right here. Dodge tool, Burn tool. With the Dodge tool, I want to turn the midtones to highlights, so then it'll only deal with highlights only. And I'm going to bring the exposure down to only like 2%, a very, very little percent. So you just basically paint it on and build it up, just like I did with the when I was painting on her skin. So again, I might go over a few of the shadows just in this little sleeve here. Again though, you don't want to be working on the midtones with Burn, which is the little hand tool. You want to use only the shadows on the range, and again you only want it around 2 to 3%, and just build it up as you go. Alright, so the before and after on those Dodge and Burn I just popped some of the highlights out, and I noticed that this one sleeve, the shadows were not as noticeable as the rest of the dress, so I wanted to kind of just add in some more shadows in there. So the total before and after of all the dodge and burn, that's the before and that's the after. So the next thing that I want to do is kind of add to that painterly effect, and so what I'm going to do is add a texture on the image here. So I will go find my texture and I will be right back. Alright, so once you've found your texture in your file folder, you can just drag it and drop it onto your image. It's going to bring up the free transform tool, and if you need to, you can adjust it to just by pulling this out a little bit in the corners and hitting enter here. And what I do with my textures is I go from normal to soft light, and I will always bring the opacity down to about 40 or 50%. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if the texture needs to be blurred at all. Since I'm really going for kind of a painterly effect, I think I'll leave it as it is. But I will, let's try a bit of a blur on there. So we'll blur, Gaussian blur, but I'm going to bring it down to only about like 1 or 2. And just see what that does to the texture here. Okay, I think I like it blurred just slightly. And then what I'll do is I'll put a layer mask on the texture layer, so by hitting the little mask button. And I'm going to paint it off of her skin with a black brush at 100%, just off of her skin. And just see what my mask looks like here. It's not the cleanest, but that's okay. You know, this image actually really reminds me of like those old-timey vintage photographs. That's what it's kind of reminding me of here. And then what I'll do is I'll turn my opacity down to about 40% and just make my brush bigger and just go around all of her. And I just hold my brush down. What did I just do there? Control Z. There we go. Control Z, if you make a mistake, Control Z is like taking a step backwards. So I'm just going to zoom out to get the rest of her dress here. Let's see where my mask is. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty good. And then I'll go down to 20%. Keeps wanting to put my 0 in front of my 2. There we go. And then I'll make my brush even larger and just kind of paint all around her and blend that texture in. Alright. Just needs a bit more there. Alright. So just get rid of that mask there and see the before and after. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more just to see how my mask is looking, because I don't want to see any noticeable stuff blending into her, but I also don't want to see a noticeable line in the backdrop. So I'm just making sure that it's looking pretty good, and if I need to, I can add some back in or take more out. But to me, this is looking pretty good. Alright, so I'm liking how that's looking. Alright, so this is looking really good to me. The only other thing that I want to do is kind of add a little bit of a painterly look to it. So I'm going to flatten this entire thing. And I'm going to make a copy. So drag it down to the plus sign. And I'm going to bring it up into Camera Raw. So I'll go up to Filter and Camera Raw Filter. Alright, so this is my Camera Raw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the basic, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the clarity up a little bit, and I'm also going to go into the details panel. Nope, sorry, it's not in details anymore. Effects, maybe? They changed it around on me with the latest maybe it's in basics. Clarity. Maybe it's a noise reduction. Let's just zoom in here and see what. Ooh. We zoomed in too much. Okay, so let's see what noise reduction does, and that actually is making the effect I want. So I'm not going to go crazy with it, but I will bring it up maybe to 40%. So it used to be called luminosity, and that's why I was getting a little confused there. They changed it. So it was called luminosity, but it looks like it is now in the noise reduction, which it just really just smooths everything out and kind of gives it that painterly feel. So I'm going to go back into the basics, and now that I've got the noise reduction on there, I'm going to just add a little bit more clarity. And I'm going to hit OK. Now we are back in Photoshop, and I'll zoom in here. Did I make a brush point? No, okay. So I'm just going to show you the before and after of that Camera Raw. So that's the before, that's the after. Alright, so I really like the effect, but I don't want it so much on the texture in the background. I kind of liked that textured look. So I'm going to put a mask on this, and I'm just going to kind of paint it off a little bit, maybe at 50% on the backdrop here. Bring a little bit of that texture back in. Alright, so that looks good. And I'll zoom in again a bit here. Before and after. And you can really see the effect in her skirt, just smoothing out all that texture that was in there. And to me, this looks like a finished image, but I will sharpen it a little bit. I'm just going to flatten here. And I might just sharpen the details in her face a little bit here. So I'm going to go, I made a new copy of my background, and I'm going to go Filter, Sharpen, and Unmask Sharpen. And I'm just going to bring up her face because that's what I care about here. So let's just see the before and after of that. Sometimes I bring it way up and we'll bring it back, or all the way down and then bring it up, just to kind of see what effect it's kind of making on those details. Alright, I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to put a mask on it. Control I to invert, and we'll zoom right into her face here. And with a 100% opacity brush, white brush, just going to paint it on over her, the details of her face here. Alright, so that looks good to me. And that looks like a finished image. I'm super happy with it. I think she looks beautiful. But what mother doesn't think their child is beautiful? Anyways, thank you so much for being here for this tutorial. And I really hope you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!